The currency heat map for Tradestation is really two indicators in one, and I'll explain the reason we developed it. And the principle behind it is twofold. First of all, it's to give you in one single workspace all the 252 cells which this represents in terms of bullish or bearish sentiment. The reason I say that is because across the top here you've got all the time frames. You've got the 1, the 5, the 15, 30, hourly, hour 4, daily, weekly and the monthly. So you have 9 time frames here. And then down the side here we have the 28 currency pairs in this ranking ladder, which I'll come on to in a moment. So what you're looking at in this 252 cell array is an instant snapshot in real time of the bullish or bearish sentiment for that particular currency pair in each time frame. And these are calculated from a midpoint, a fulcrum, very much the same way as for the currency matrix, where 0 is the midpoint. A negative number indicates a bearish sentiment, a positive number indicates a bullish sentiment. The bullish characters are in black. The bearish characters are in white. So what you see portrayed here is a real-time snapshot as bullish and bearish sentiment changes, the strength of those changes, and how it is rippling out from your faster time frames out across the cell array into the slower time frames. So from a trading perspective, from an intraday perspective, what this gives you is a sense of an instant snapshot of the bullish and bearish sentiment at the moment, but also how it is changing and whether that particular currency pair is moving from a bullish phase to a bearish phase or from a bearish phase to a bullish phase. Because in exactly the same way as you look at the currency strength indicator across multiple time frames, or the currency matrix across time frames, or the currency array in the same way, it's the same principle here. So whatever starts in this fastest time frame of a minute, if it's a true change in trend, in other words a strong change in trend rather than just a minor pullback, it's going to move across into the 5 minute, through the 15, 30 and ultimately right the way across to the other side of the array. And the reason that these currency pairs are up at the top here are primarily because the bearish sentiment towards them is weighted by a slower time frame. In other words, the dailies and the weeklies and the monthlies carry much more weight. And that is how we arrive at this ranking ladder over here on the left-hand side. And the difference here with the heat map is that, first of all, you're looking at the cells here from an intraday perspective. So as a scalping trader, you'd be interested in the 1, the 5, see what's going on up to the 15 and so on and so forth. But in terms of how we arrive at this ranking ladder down the left-hand side, each of these cells is weighted because, and it makes sense when you think about it, a daily bearish or bullish sentiment, we have bullish sentiment here, should carry more weight than a 4-hour. Equally, a 4-hour should carry more weight than an hour, and so on and so forth. So the sell sentiment with the least amount of weight, if you like, in terms of the position of this particular currency pair in the ranking ladder would be the 1 minute. The greatest amount of weight at the other extreme would be carried by the monthly. So what we've done in the algorithm, in the calculation, is to reflect that weighting sentiment in the ranking here, which is why these pairs are not moving up and down the ranking ladder rapidly. And really this is the second application of the heat map, because if you are a slower term trend or swing trader, you're looking for slower term opportunities on the 4-hour, the daily and so on, then the pairs here will only move once this sentiment starts to impact the slower time frames. Now, for example, the Eurocad that we have here at the top of the ladder, in fact, if I isolate out exactly the same way as you do on the others, on the other indicators, the Eurocad, you can see we've had a lot of euro buying recently. We've got quite a lot of euro pairs up at the top here. Now, there is some bearish sentiment coming into that particular pair because you can see it reflected in the red cells, out to the hourly, even out to the 4 hour. Now that will only start to change once we start to see this number decline over on the daily and perhaps ultimately turn the cell red. Now, long before that, this will start moving down the ladder in terms of its position ranking. And that may occur over 2 or 3 days perhaps. These currency pairs don't move very quickly. They don't move up and down several slots in a day or positions in a day. They will move perhaps 1 slot, perhaps 2 positions in a day, something like that. And that's because we have weighted them according to the bullish or bearish sentiment in each of these cells. So as this sentiment changes, then let's just put them all back on again. Then ultimately these pairs will start to move. And equally down at the bottom, let's click on the bottom. What have we got? We've got CAD Swiss here. Okay, so we've got some bullish sentiment we've got bullish sentiment coming in here. The 1 and the 5, it's not terribly significant in terms of moving this off this slot. But if this bullish sentiment that's being reflected here from the hour out to the 4 hour starts to move through into the daily, and this daily number here of 157 minus 157, if that starts dropping and going down to 100 or into the 90s and so on and so forth, that is telling you that the bullish sentiment is starting to progress through into that particular time cell, and ultimately that will be enough to lift this off the bottom and start to push it up the ranking ladder, in which case, in terms of a 4 hourly or a daily chart, you will start to see this pair reverse from what has been quite a significant bearish long-term trend. Over on the monthly, you can see this is a large number, 923. So this has had a significant long-term bearish trend, and is now starting to see some bullish momentum reflected in this core here between the 15-minute and the 4 hour. And if that starts to move out into the daily, then you will start to see this start to move up the ranking ladder, and off we go. And that may take a few days, but if you're a longer term trader, that is what I say. This is the difference with this particular indicator. It really addresses the two spectrums, if you will, of both the intraday traders, who will be down at this sort of level looking at these cells, as opposed to the slower term, longer term traders. Perhaps you've got a full-time job, you haven't got time to study, be in front of the screen all day long, so you're trading the slower time frames per se. This is where the ranking ladder comes in. And in much the same way as you would use the CSI, one of the ways I like to use this particular indicator is clearly always to look at the extremes, because from the extremes will come the major reversal trends. And so I'm always looking up at the top and bottom. What's going on here? What have we got at the top? What have we got at the bottom? And once you start to see, bunches of currency pairs like this, we've got 4 Swiss francs here. So if we click off the Swiss there, there's been a lot of Swiss franc buying. And therefore, what I might be looking for is, is this setting up for a potential reversal? Is this going to be reflected in the cells? What is going on here? Is this going to ripple through this bullish sentiment that we're starting to see develop here? A little bit of it here. We're starting to see it develop here. So we'd see a minor reversal in terms of the daily chart, perhaps. But is that going to be significant? And is it going to reverse into a full-blown, from a primary bearish trend into a primary bullish trend, through into these cells? And then you will start to see these lift and move up the ranking ladder. And of course, ultimately, they move up to the top. The others move down to the bottom, and so we repeat. And this is what I said in one of the other videos. This market, the forex market, is one of mean reversion, where no currency ever stays overbought or oversold forever. They will move ultimately from one extreme to the other in exactly the same way as you saw on the currency strength indicator on a 1 minute, where they're moving from overbought to oversold. The principle is exactly the same here, although in a much slower context of time. So ultimately you will see them move up and down. And of course, the other thing, when you're isolating them out, it gives you a perspective on the sentiment across that particular complex and how that is then reflected in terms of how the pairs move per se as that gradually changes. So it's a fantastic indicator. It gives you a lot of information, again, on one single workspace. It means you don't have to have a myriad 252 monitors or screens if you wanted to see all this information displayed. So it gives you that snapshot. It's just great to have on your screen somewhere. It gives you a heads up instantly of what is going on. You can see it whether you're a scalping trader. Obviously, if you're a slower term trader, then you wouldn't need to study it every few minutes. You'd check it out on a daily, or maybe twice a day, 3 times a day, something like that. So I hope you enjoyed this particular video on the currency heat map, and thanks for watching. Lots more to come, so see you again soon, and bye for now.